Alright, looks like the first one is going live. So, hello, welcome to Bug Free Productions. We're just gonna run for a little bit. Believe I got everything set up. There we go. Okay, yep, feedback's gone. Cool. Anyway, this is set up for something I started over on the YouTube streaming, and I wanted to continue. We're just kind of moving over to Twitch for some usability reasons, for discoverability. But so far, I've been so if you're looking at catching up on Darker Racer like this, consider going and that channel over on YouTube, which would be at Bug Free Productions. So if you search Bug Free Productions, you'll get that. We stream Tuesdays at 6 p.m. There's code. Thursdays at 6 is variable. So this Thursday we'll actually have some friends over on for a deep rock stream, just to kind of try out the new stuff. Still getting situated on Twitch, and this is another thing to do. With some friends and some coworkers on. Then there's Saturday 10 a.m. art, where I just kind of work through things. Either I need the channel or do some demos for game design types things. For example, like one I would do for concept sketching, which I would do for rendering some of this. So if I just want to tweak some rendering stuff, so like editing some PNGs and just trying to adding some cool effects to stuff. It's one where it was just finishing up Brick Breaker and adding some like emitters in Unity, going over how some of that stuff works. So if you're interested in doing that sort of thing in Unity or in something like Infinity or adding some 3D type stuff, make sure to check that out. With that, probably pause the music and we'll head over to the code. Just because I have a hard trouble hearing, hearing and thinking about this at the same time. So where I left off with the other project is, so basically we have an arcade racer here, and you can follow up to this point. Everything's recorded over on the YouTube channel. So if you see this video and want to follow along, go ahead and go back and watch those ones, and they're pretty easy for semi-experienced coders. So like if you know how to program in C#, you'll be pretty good for most of this tutorial because it's very simple patterns. I usually keep things very simple. If you're new to programming, maybe check out Brick Breaker, which is a mini series I did over on there on the YouTube channel just for introduction level. Like it's very minimal code, very minimal. Just walking through the different tools and stuff that Unity has. It goes a little bit more quickly, and it doesn't have something for the first part of it. Like I changed my setup a little bit to screen record without sharing the entire screen. So we're looking at that, but there we go. So we're looking at that and just kind of going on with that. But with that, it's about 2 after, so we'll probably get started on some stuff here. Probably just gonna focus on editing some simple things down here where I'm looking at just incorporating that ground checker I built in the other episode and went over in the other video. So I'm going to be looking at SCO. An animation we probably won't use for this project. That's just something I'm testing over there. But we're going to look at probably racer movement. And everywhere I use the ground state, so I probably want to check move states and start opening some of these. So accelerate. In previous videos we set all this up and it has the use of some basic movement and it doesn't really check what the ground is. It doesn't even really use the ground check, so what we're gonna do is just go in here and edit some methods. My first one would be, so we move, we rotate racer, and we accelerate. So I don't want rotate racer or accelerate to take place if the object is not on the ground, right? Not in the accelerate state anyways. So we'd probably wrap this then. So if we check the move direction, since this is just getting it from a rib, which is the racer input bridge, the bridge we use to get input for the player character. This is still looking at mostly player input, and we haven't really moved on to either separating the states for the computer player or the or separate for the player. We're just kind of using all of this to get our inputs down, and then we'll probably build a, not from scratch, but edit into that double functionality of having it usable by the computer as well. So we can pretty much just do a full wrapping here. So we only want to I'm bad at coming up with words, so I'll type comments like do thing if on ground, and then I'll just come back and change this when I have real words to use, some big boy words. But not always good with words, so sometimes thing, and then just replace it when you think of thing. So we're gonna go accelerate racer. So we basically want to check if it's on ground. So that would be the, in the last one we put the ground check into the ARMC. So ARMC dot and ARMC, that's not a dot. ARMC dot, and it is ground. Maybe I should follow it back for a second. So I have ground, player body, rigid body, current R, GS. So it's just GS. Okay. So we'll just change that to GS. And why doesn't that come up? Because a variable does not use like a type. Is not used like a type. Did I type in? Probably because it's an access, it's not a. So what would I do if, let's construct our if statement then. if that and I don't remember what that is either. So let's just follow it back again. Then ground context. This accessor I put in here is grounded. Yeah. My memory's a bit like a soup that's been cooked for too long. It's just a little bit mushy. And mostly potato. So if RMC is grounded, then we want to do our thing. So then we just wrap this. And then we put that in vector3 move direction equals this. Now why does that not want to work that way? What's its error? Local parameter named cannot be declared in the scope because the name is used in closing. Okay, so because he exists outside at this level, we can't use him in here. Defined, so but that's fine because we're gonna comment all this stuff out. So then all this should run fine. So if I do Control S, that should save the page, and if I Control Shift S, that saves all of our open tabs. And then we'll take a head over into Unity, and if it plays, we should still have H, yep, because it does set the ground. Then we have our basic physics still running. We'll head towards that capsule. That's all good. So, looking at that then, oh, and we need to get rid of that overlay. Whoop. So we'll get rid of that overlay early. Yeah, I'm working on a frame so that I don't have to have those up anymore. Because I do forget to turn them off. Because, like I said, my brain is soup. But let's go to here. Maybe. So this works, and we know the ground check works correctly because we already did that. So just knowing that this if statement runs is enough for right now. So now that that runs, that's implemented. So now what do we want to do? We want to keep going on some other stuff, right? We want to do some, what would we want to do? So accelerate's working. I notice I added some sort of jump mechanic in here a little bit ago. So I probably want to go in there and check it. Again, if anybody comes in and is watching and has any questions, just go ahead and make sure you post them in the chat, or if you're watching the video, I don't know how Twitch works, if there's a comment system where you can leave comments on videos that you can see questions on, but there's that, and then once this goes to YouTube, it'll also be that that you can leave comments on and such. Accelerate. So we have accelerate. We just made this if check wrapper so that we can see we don't want to do any of the move stuff unless we are on the ground. And that should work for that one. So where was jump? So what was I think I need to go to those input bridge, I think. So that's on the rib. I'm just gonna go probably back to Unity and just try and track that down because I don't remember. what file that would have been in exactly. So racer movement, racer input bridge. Racer input bridge, move input, race start, racer jump. So racer jump context is started. So if it's canceled, we debug the content.duration. Which we proved did start. This if statement isn't necessary anymore. This was for testing. And basically so let's just walk that back, delete that. Turn this into an if statement because you can't have an else if without an if. And we just debug.log the context duration. That was set up in the last video. So what would we want to do here? Context duration. We're looking at this. And I want to use that context duration in a way to increase the force of the jump based on that. So we look at our, I think I have some variables up here tuned in. We have the jump base, the jump multiplier. So this is the base jump, this is the multiplier. These are bad values for that. But either way, they're editable in an inspector up to 100, so that's fine. We want, protected, range, no more than 3-second wait. Okay. So here we would want to go down here, and if we're implementing our jump, so we just want to add force up onto the rigid body. And how does racer input bridge work? Or not how does it work, but what object is it actually on? So let's go, I need inspector open. And it looks like racer input bridge is on the same level as the rigid body. So we don't actually have to go find it in a different object. We can just get it, and we don't have to serialize the field either, which is nice. So we're just gonna go rigid body, we're gonna need get component. And instead of doing that here, I'll actually probably do that non-enable. So we'll need to make so here's jump variables. And I'm just gonna add a protected so it's inherited type of rigid body. RB, because that's Unity standard, not Unity standard, but it's shorthand used by many Unity developers. So RB null. We don't really need to define it up here. We just need to say it exists. Then we go down to onEnable, and we're going to go RB equals get component rigid body. I type this line so often that it knows what I mean. And then we go to, since everything happens after onEnable, we don't have to worry about that, because the enable runs before its first update. Cool. And then we have a new thing that I can do here. So basically what I want to do is I want to take the RB, and I want to do dot add force. I've covered add force before, but basically we have our not RB. So we could get the transform dot up. So transform dot up, which is the up direction on the y-axis, or positive input on the y-axis, more accurately. Transform dot up, and that's a vector 3, right? So that's a vector 3, and we can multiply. Vector 3 is by our jump mult. Then we can further multiply that by our, which was this thing, context.duration. Context.duration referring to the duration that the button has been held. So we just do all multiply on that, and then I need a force mode just because I like being explicit when I do this. You can do impulse or force. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to add an force mode dot impulse. This being that I add it once right away and then do not touch it. It doesn't, and this method isn't going to loop. So this green axis in world space cannot be applied to operand vector 3 and double. There's a double somewhere. Did I define a double? Float, 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 float. Did Unity finally use a double? Is context duration a double? Yeah, it is. Because if I take that out, yeah, it is. Context duration is a double. This is the first double I've seen Unity use. Okay. Can I do a dot? Dot to I guess I can do convert to. I'm just not a big fan of it. Object.convert to system type. Yeah, I don't use this a lot, but does this work? Nope. That might have to be searched real quick. Convert convert to single, supposedly. Float equals convert to single, and then so that would be the value of that converted to. So convert dot. Okay, so convert dot to single, and then we have the context dot duration, which is the value we want to convert. So there's a little more math in there than we anticipated, but that's fine. It's just basic math. C# functions are pretty fast. So what does that do? That adds an impulse of these many multipliers. That should all be good. What's one thing else that we want to do here? That's racer jump. So one other thing we should probably put in there is if is actually outside this if check. So we're looking outside the if check. What would I want to do here? Well, I'd probably want to go and do an if check for if. So we don't have a rib object coming in here. So we'd probably have to go get that. And we don't want to be getting it all the time because that's something we have to look for. Get components kind of slow. So if we're getting that component all the time, we might actually want to go up here and put it in protected. Protected, race remove context. Let's see. Race remove context, because I never want to go. I could get the ground context directly. But does that benefit? Okay. So the jump. So this is where it gets tricky. Okay, I put this in here because it was going to be easier to set up the hook for jump in racer input bridge, and then it would be in a different script that I was working on. So if we put this in move context, that makes no sense. If we put this in, I just need to walk through it. If we put this in race context, this makes no sense. If we put this in ground context, it makes no sense. And we can't do a coroutine in a non-mono behavior class. Correct. So what does that leave us with? That means that we either have to put it on racer input bridge, move context, or ground context. So I guess we'll leave it in here for now, and we'll probably move it into ground context at some point, because I don't like it being in the input bridge. It's kind of feels kind of messy. Actually, since I feel that way, I'm gonna go ahead and so this is our no wait, because this is input, so this comes in here. We could put the method in there, but forget it. Forget it. Overcomplicating it. Just I'm just going to get the racer ground context, which is just ground context. Ground context, lower GC. Come on. There we go. So let's not overthink it. Let's put ground context right here. Let's go to our unenable and just get our ground context. Get components of type that is ground context with parameters of nothing. So that should be looking pretty good. And then if parameter gc dot is grounded equal false lowercase, and it's equal because it's equivalency, not assignment. Then we do the thing. So we'd probably want to go Control X, Control V, Control S, and we should be good to go. And we can put contents. only if grounded. So let's go ahead and go check the Unity version now. So the Unity side, we can probably go ahead and play. Callbacks con keyboard space. Null reference exception. This is not found. GC, because yep, because I did not assign it. Did not assign it. So we just need to set GC equal to that. Then we can try it again. And we can do a play. Then we can get a run. So why isn't it adding any force to our thing? Well, we can see in the console that nothing's debugging, which is worrying. So why would nothing debug in there? So that'd be okay. Focus B. So on enable, if this works, so if context equal false, so that means grounded is being equal to false, right? Maybe not. Oh, grounded equal false. Little case of just moving too fast. Go ahead and do a play again. Was it tall jump? Did I? Yep, I did. So you can see in the inspector that it's jumping, but I just don't have enough difference in scene to. And you notice we can't do successive jumps. So that one's all working out, and then we just have some tuning to do. So one thing that I would do is I don't like that. So we don't really need to worry about this anymore, right? Debug, everything's working correctly. We don't have to worry about it. Cool. What's the other thing though? The other thing is we probably want there to be a cooldown. It doesn't really matter all that much. So there's a couple problems with this. So the person would be able to power up their jump before landing, and then once they're grounded, use the jump by releasing. You can kind of decide if that's a problem or not. That's kind of up to gameplay desire. I would probably not do that. Actually, I'm fine with it as long as it's. My idea is that they start storing power and they lose a little bit of speed because of it. So that would actually be fine with me. I'm not too worried about it. This is really high, or can be really high, because we have like a maximum of 25 by a maximum of 25 by a maximum of transform up. So it's like 1 on Y times 25 by 25 at max comes kind of high. We can affect it using the jump multiplier. We could also allow for another thing where we have a, not by, here, let me just show instead. Jump multiplier. We could add like max jump pow, that being equal to 25. So you can't have more than that much force, right? And then what could we do? So this whole thing, so let's cut this, Control X, and then what? We could use mathf dot clamp MP and does not contain a definition for system.mathf. Is there a problem here? Well, there's two problems right here. I don't want Unity Visual Scripting available. And then mathf. Okay, Unity has a lowercase f, C# has a capital F. And then we can clamp this guy. Oh. Yep, nope, this is looking correct. So part of clamp is then you add, so you have the value that you want to clamp, which is the multiplier conversion of that. Then you have the lowest bound by the highest bound. So max jump pow becoming this. So it's rb.addForce transform up mathf.clamp jump mults, or the transform adding force in the direction of up clamped value of this return, the context.duration, clamped between 0 and the maximum jump power set by the designer in the expector with serialized field range of 1 to 100. And it's defaulted to 25, so we can't go faster. Can't jump up with more force than 25 by default. So that's looking pretty good, right? Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'm not going to do a coroutine with this actually, because I think that charge before you land to do another jump sounds fine, because we're not adding any speed in the air either. So if you have a thing where we push slow down for the jump as we build power for the jump, and you can't accelerate while you're in the air, that's going to really add to some player ability, so you can't just like hold it before you hit the ground. Introduces complexity by itself, which is nice. So restart, that's so this should all be good. Delay jump. So I had this coroutine all set up to use as a coroutine, and then we could still do it then, I guess. I already have all this set up. Or I'll just comment it out, which is more like me. I'll leave it there in case I want to use it later, but I'm kind of deciding against it. I'm not liking it as much. Which means we don't need the can jump, we don't need the wait for jump, and we don't need the jump delay. I'm also gonna, nope, jump variables, or jump variables, you'll see we can minimize that. That's just because I put it in a region. Love regions. And then what do we have? Unenabled jump for, we can just comment this out too. And then get component, erase remove context. So I had the erase remove context already. Let's go RMC. Yeah, I don't reference it anywhere else except for this. And that's just to make it shorter and easy to look at. I'm gonna find all references of that and just pull this up, see if I do reference it anywhere. And it's literally just in the enable, so I can probably actually, I'm not gonna remove it because what's the point, but I guess I could have just used that instead of the ground context, even though it would be a longer chain to talk to. But racer jump canceled. This sounds like it could be fun. So if I just control saved all that, I go back to Unity. So what's the racer input bridge move context dot accelerate? Ah, racer input bridge, and then we go down to the, gotta make sure to save it. Go back to Unity. Okay, easier way to fix this. Where protected, I just controlled Z back. So undo to the point where I changed move context. I'll just rename RMC. So standing for racer move context. And then it'll automatically change all that stuff for me. Now if we go back to Unity, yes, no problems. Now we're loading and running. Then we got that. It's looking pretty good. We haven't added the slowing effect yet. As you can see, 25 is probably way too much. But we can change that. And what I would want to do here is actually a little bit different. So let's go here. Okay, I did hit stop. So what I want to do here, racer start being, no, racer jump being here. That's just editing type variables. And I don't really like having these guys up here. Being that then you have to go to each racer input bridge and adjust them, doing that sort of thing. That doesn't make much sense, right? Would it make more sense if there was just like some configuration type of object with a parameter? Well, um, let's think about that. So where would the parameter for jump be best? Do we want jump to have like a solid singular maximum jump power, jump multiplier, and base jump, or do we want each move state to have that? So say like accelerate, dash, grind, all of those guys, do we want them to have separate ones? Answer is probably yes. So we don't even have to create a new one. There's one that I made in a previous stream that will work for this. And all we need to do is go down to Unity and go to the project and go into move states, ground states, no, go to scripts, go to SEO parameters, and I have two parameters or two folders, one for parameters, one for SEO. SEO is where my script for scriptable objects go, and parameters being where the scriptable objects themselves go. So if we go in scriptable objects SEO, I need a body object. What was object rotation? Okay, that's not it. Ground check. Is this it? Probably not. Move state SEO. I have a ground check SEO. If I was doing more with that, that might make more sense. But this one, yeah, we do this here. And if you're thinking ahead, you'll notice that grind you could do either as a ground state or as a move state, but since there's other movement type things that grind doesn't do that accelerate and all those other ones do, I'm putting it in the move state so that it's a little more controlled, just in my opinion. So basically, we have all this stuff, max turn speed, all that. So I'm gonna go ahead and go max. Protected, this will be a float. Max jump height, which is equal to, I'm gonna keep it at 25. And then I'm also gonna go back here and change it because I want this to be a serialized field. Serialized fields with a range of 25. No. We're just gonna do 1 to 100. Actually, we can tell 25 is way too much, so let's cap it at 25, because... And then let's put this defaulted at 50. So max jump height, now this will be editable in an inspector, and we'll see that in a second, but before I do that, I have to create one more line. That is the public getter for the max jump height, and return max jump height. This is the first time that line's auto-completed very well, but so it's max jump height with capital, meaning that it's publicly accessible, public float, max jump height, get, return max jump height, the internal protected variable. Well, it's not internal, that's a separate keyword. It's the class protected float. So there's that. So then we can get this from it. Now, here's the other thing. So that's in this move state now, right? So how do we get that from racer input bridge? Because if we look at racer input bridge, we can't get that from the move context. If we try and get it from the move context, it has to get it from one of its states. So we can either call in current state, but that gets to be a pain in the calls. So I probably would do it in the move context. So if we did the move context, right? Move context would need some type of method. What's on enable? Fixed update. Virtual void setup bars. Yes. What's the coroutines? Oh, it's just blocking the comments together to minimize them. Don't really need coroutines right now. Constructors, not really. I'm not going to need change states either. So what would this be for? This would be for the jump. This would just be for getting jump max height. So we could do it as a method here, or we could just do it as an accessor, which is probably what I would recommend. I just gotta kind of decide where it is. I don't want it in with any states. I don't want it in with any components. I don't want it in with any of these SCOs. So we're gonna need access to the max jump height, which is going to be a public float. I'm just going to go there. And this is going to be a getter. So we do a quirls get quirls return. And then what would we want? Well, we want the current cur RMS racer move state. Cool. And we want its max speed. Well, it doesn't have a max speed. It has a max lean. That's something I'm messing with on the solo development. We don't have max height for jumping, right? Because that's not part of a state yet. Well, what would be the idea? Do we want it? We'd want the state to be able to return its own setting, which would be under one of these SCOs, right? But so we could either do a method to access one of these SCOs depending on what our move state is, which would be a Boolean check, but that would be like 5 Boolean checks, and that's kind of irritating, right? Also kind of messy, a lot of if checking, which is the bane of good programming. So max jump height being get return this thing. What could we do better that way? We could do in the, let's get a state open. So base racer move state, right? Edit how characters move. It's not that, we're just gonna go straight into the accessors. Right here I have max lean, that's how much the bike can lean in my private project that I'm using all of this code in. So public virtual, meaning it can be overridden. Float, which would yes, float, which is going to be max jump height, quirls, get return, set it to default to 15. Now, why aren't we doing anything special in here? Because I don't want to. This is going to be overridden, and actually I would I would make that abstract, but because I need to be able to build instances of a eraser move state in here as a type, I don't believe I can make this. I don't believe I can make this class abstract. If I go to move state, is there? No, apparently I can. Apparently I can do that. Wait, move state. That's just move state STO. That's not eraser move context. Does that become a problem? It actually isn't a problem. Okay. I would have thought that would have been a problem. Eraser move state, public virtual. And then these can still be virtuals. Can I do an abstract getter though? Abstract. Do I just delete this part then? Yeah, I don't think that works for getters, setters, maybe. But I could probably leave that abstract so I don't have any problems later. Because you can make all these abstract, but I didn't really want to. I wanted to make sure everybody had them, and just for a lot of these methods, make sure everybody had a default, just because I didn't want to deal with having no defaults, going back and forth and editing a bunch of code, but it's just less of a headache this way. Especially since I'm the only dev on this one right now. So move states, we're going to look at a few more things. We're just looking at a couple. So once that's in there, then we just have to open our other ones. So like accelerate is one. So what I would do here is I'd go to accessors. You can see the is accelerate boolean is overridden to true. So just like I overrode that one, it's going to be public override float max jump height. And I'm just going to redefine it this way because this is how I like to look at it. Get return, and we're returning the that's a thought though, isn't it? So if you think about that for a second, this class doesn't have any reference to a move context. All the move contexts were passed into the other methods. So for you to come here and get the eraser move context that is, and have it accelerate something, you need to pass in a move context, which means that this can't be an accessor. This has to be a method. So we can't do this. We have to do eraser move context a RMC, and it's going to have to be return, and we'll just do it all in one command, or one argument, I should say, one max jump height. So that's going to be the ARMC dot accelerate SCO dot max jump height. Cool. So the jump will have to pass in this, or not the jump. The jump will go to the context, which will pass in itself to the current context, getting this method to call, so that this returns to the context and the context returns to the bridge. So why do we do it that way? Just because the method calls are a little more straightforward that way. It's easier to read and easier to check and proof later. So we actually need context curms dot max jump height parameter, pass in this, meaning this object that it is, and we return that. So this should work always using the accelerate so far, and then racer move, because racer move state, everybody will run that same max jump height, unless we overwrite it because it's virtual. So if I want to go accelerate, I won't overwrite it, but Control C. Let's go accelerate. I will minimize this region just so I can. So there's that one. And I don't need virtual, I need override. So then we override that one. Let's do one that's not so obvious. Racer move context. So we have stun, grind, drift, dash, accelerate, fly, right? All of this. So then idle. Idle just shouldn't jump, right? So then idle would have its separate case. So I need to go up to the top where they're defined. State creation. So let's take idle for instance. Idle shouldn't jump ever because it's not running, it's not doing anything. It's the character is idling when we spawn them in position. So should never jump. And if he never jumps, what do we need then? So we don't need to move, we just need a new, there we go. Well, instead of setting it up here, I won't set it here. I'd set it in the ARMC's idle SCO. Idle SCO. So then, and we can see how this interacts. So you have idle, and it shouldn't jump at all. Now with all the stuff we've typed in so far, let's Control Shift S everything. Let's go back into the Unity area. And looking at the Unity area, I have one console liner, two console liners. I did not put my semicolon in the correct place. I did not finish my return. I need to delete this line. Then we go back to Unity. Yep. That was the old get I didn't finish removing. So you can see me jumping up to like 25 power. Fine. So if we go to the project, into the scripts, let's pull this up a little bit. I'm gonna go to parameters, SEO params, parameters, and then in an earlier stream I created all these different parameter objects and set them up with a move context. Pretty simple, not all straightforward, but the SEOs are. So if we look at that, I want to look at max jump height. So this is for idle. So if I just turn that to 01, that's a problem. Okay, so the jump height should actually have and max jump height should be max jump pow. We can rename some stuff when we go back in. Essentially, we'll have to go back in anyway in order to illustrate this correctly. So we would do that in the racer. Okay, so we return it from an SCO. So we'd have to open the SCO, move state SCO. So move state SCO needs I have order 0. I didn't know I actually did that. At any rate, max jump height. Let's rename that to max jump pow, meaning the power. Bro, fight the power. That didn't happen, did it? Rename. There we go. Max jump pow. Now we should be able to go back to here. And now we should be able to set it to 0. Did I still not? Did I not save it? I didn't adjust the range, I adjusted the naming, got distracted, and then forgot to change that. Okay. From there, I think we can test it. So now we can probably pop. Yep. It's still jumping. So the other thing is maybe I didn't go back and change the racer move state, racer move state SCO. I don't think I changed it in the bridge. I think it's still just using that jump power. Yeah, max jump pow. So then it would be RMC dot max jump height, and let's actually trace that back and rename it. I don't like what I named it. Okay. Going back to Unity, play. And you'll notice now he doesn't jump. But if I were to hit the H key, which puts him into accelerate from my testing earlier, you can see it does in fact set off the jump. Okay, so now he jumps if he's grounded, you hold the build up ready for a jump. That's cool, right? Well, almost there. And why do I say almost there? Because I want this to be where I leave that. I'd want to change that to be something. Still move my variables now that I know they work, and do that same thing with the jump multiplier. And it's not very exciting, but we'll go ahead and finish that up quick. So if I go back here, so I want to just go back to Racer Input Bridge. I want to keep adding jump power to the move context. And what would I do? Duration, it'd be jump mult. I want to move jump mult out, right? So max jump power here should be, let's comment it out just in case we want to come back and use it for some testing or something later. Jump mult, I'm just gonna fully comment out too, because then it'll show me in red in Visual Studio where that's referenced, so I'll know to come back and change that later. So jump mult should be the same as the last one we just edited. So it should be a jump mult. Just to keep it fully different and edited, but you know, changeable later. Max jump how. So this one would be max jump mult. Race your move state. Oh, let's rename that. Pow. Row fight the powwow. What do we got here then? So that's gonna affect accelerate, but it renamed it. So as long as I use the rename function, I'm safe. Jump mult. And then this goes into race remove context. And then this is public float. Max jump mult. Get return cur RMS dot this so then by default it'll be 15, and then as we keep going it'll fix. I think we defaulted to accelerate, which is fine. Max jump mult to the racer move input state accelerate dot this. So then we just need to go to the move state SCO. And then this is going to be protected float. So then everybody should be in the correct order with the correct returns. And it wouldn't really reflect anything, but that's just how we would set up going into that next one. Then we go to accelerate. And we do public override of a float. Public override of a float. Yes, it is. And it's going to be max lean, max jump. Max jump mult. Return the base, which would be accelerate, but let's be explicit about that. Whoops. J max jump mult. So then all that's set up. So that's more modular. All your designers can go in, change those values really easy, and it doesn't affect your script at all from here going forward. And it's not like they can go in and make a change in one place. Shouldn't be max jump mult. It should be jump mult, shouldn't it? It should just be jump mult. And why should it be just jump mult? Because it's not a maximum, it's just the straight multiplier that we use. Whoops. That was bad. Jump mult. That didn't change because that was, yeah, there. From here it should all look right. No errors. New jump mults here, max jump power, jump multiplier. Then we can play with that for the different things. And again, the reason you do, like I'm using this type of thing is because I got really irritated with having to edit a bunch of prefab objects and some other stuff, and it's much easier if you can just have some scriptable objects that you point to that are, in this case, parameter type objects, and your designer can come in here and edit the values to their heart's content, and it shouldn't affect the it'll affect the outcome, but it shouldn't affect the way you continue to write your code. Um, and should continue not to affect the way you, or at least affect it less as you keep building new objects and stuff in Unity, new prefabs and such, because you can just point right here and like, here's all the settings. You don't have to worry about having the correct defaults or Yeah, you don't have to worry about having the correct defaults all the time. You can just point to an object that has all of them already, which is nice. Um, Even though it takes a little more setup time, it's very nice and it saves a lot of time overall trying to look for different things. So, um, what would the next thing be? Next thing would probably be to go and, well, let's see. We've incorporated the ground checker into the accelerate. We've incorporated it into the other thing. So maybe we just pick a state here or something. Um, yeah, and this would be where somebody could make a suggestion on what state we would work on next. Not fly, that's for my personal project. Won't be doing that for stream. Unless somebody really wants to see it. Uh, then there's grind, then there's ground check. I don't really feel like doing grind tonight just because it's like frickin' it's gonna be longer than the half hour that's left, so then there's ground check, idle, stun. Could look at stun, just kind of develop a behavior of what we actually want stun to do. Max speed of stun, I could really care less. Um, Turn speed, none of this stuff matters, but we have to have it because it's just keep everything symmetrical. Max turn speed, all of that just doesn't, yeah, it doesn't matter. What do we want to do then? So let's go ahead and do a, yeah, let's work on, it's gotta be dash or dash drift or stun. Stun will be fast, and then we can start working on dash. Dash might be fun. Dash might be too much actually, because it's gonna have some scriptables. So let's, same with drift. So let's start with stun. Let's go back to scripts. Let's go to SCO. No, let's go to race movement. Let's go move state, maybe. And then we'll grab stun. So the idea of stun is just that it doesn't want to do anything. So we don't have to worry about state changes. I'm not worried. Leave that for now, as whatever was put in there from the other videos. And we have public is stun, bool is stun, returns true. Cool, right? There's no movement methods right now. And if we go back to racer move state, edit how character moves. So this is overwritten in idle. Is it? It must be overridden in idle to just do nothing. So in stun, let's overwrite it. To also do nothing. So that would be, was it public? Override. Let's look at it again. Edit how character moves. Alright. Oh, let's do this. Let's just grab how the character moves. So I just minimized my region and then copied the line. And when I go back to here, it'll give me the whole freaking set that I wanted. And you'll notice these are virtual, so I want these to be override. Override. I just don't need this to do anything, except do this maybe. Limit the velocity within the world. Because this is where the character has no control over the movement, right? So it only makes sense that the only thing happening is limiting it from going too fast for the world. And then protected acceleration, accelerate racer. Let's override that. Override, and it pretty much does. We're still gonna accelerate the racer, go forward. I think we're just gonna like do a little shock and some type of effect or something. Make the player flash red or something. But ARMC.RB velocity.magnitude RMC. So we'd still accelerate the racer because we don't want them to stop accelerating unless we did. But if we did, let's just change what we're accessing. So it wouldn't be the accelerate scriptable object. It would be the what would that be? The blanking a little bit. Stun. The stun SCO. And same with this one. Stun SCO. I think stun SCO turn speed between that and 0. This is also wrong because you don't clamp a 0. Player bot rotate. Okay. But honestly, we're not going to rotate the player in this way, in this thing anyway, so we'll just leave that. Reason being, I'd probably have a coroutine that we're going to do the rotation in, and gonna have to stop and think about how I do that one. But I don't want to change too much. Because right now the body object is references what it looks at forward too, so I don't want to do. Might have to edit the object a little bit on that one. But you can also do like shock or smoke or something else for a little bit. Instead of like the Mario Kart spin out, which would be cool, but we can do other equally cool things too, which might be easier and more fun to look at. So this is looking pretty okay. And since this is looking pretty okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say I need to look at stun or something else. Yeah, so this is stun. It's not gonna add, it's gonna add an accelerate, but it now references the stunned at acceleration. So we can change how fast it can accelerate. I just left this in here because I don't want it to be hit 0 at any point, because I never want the player to feel like they're getting stopped in this game. It wants to feel like it's going forward, which would kind of break it if we all of a sudden just stopped moving forward. Bug-free tool, world limiter. So this looks pretty good. Maybe we look at a different one now. So maybe we start with dash. Let's go ahead and go back to Unity. I don't really have a stun yet, and we'll set up health on a different day. I'm doing a kind of a different health system for this one, and I do kind of a less one that I've seen less often. Actually, I think I'm the only one I've seen use this style, the one style I'll show uh next Tuesday, but um I'm sure other people do it. I just haven't seen it all that often. So we have Drift. Should we start with Drift? No, we'll start with Dash. So if I open Dash, um, these namespaces are just for me to keep my code section separate. They're if you're new, I wouldn't recommend using these because they do complicate it a little bit. But as you can see, it helps organize your code so that you know which extension you want to talk to. Um, edit how character moves. So in Dash, how do we edit how character moves? We have move, does the same thing. Um, we have oh, that's one thing we need to change in idle actually. No, not in idle, in stun. So idle, move player. So move does nothing, jump. Okay, and that jump was more for illustration. This thing, accelerate racer in stun. We do this, but we didn't add that wrapper, which was to which is our do thing if on ground. Um, that's just because I don't want any added acceleration while the thing goes in the air. Either way. So let's go ahead and do a check. If ARMC okay. This is the part of night where I get sleepy and I mistype everything. ARMC not null. That's not what I want. If ARMC dot the race remove context dot um the GS, the ground state dot is grounded, and that should mean that if that boolean is true, but I like to be explicit because I've had times in Python where it wasn't, it didn't come out correct. And then also it's good to be explicit just so that you can tell when exactly something breaks. Because if, for example, I take this off and I assume that this means that it is true. So if I assume that ARMC is grounded means true, and I print that statement as false, well then I have to think of why would that be false? Is it just returning me the value, and the value is always the value, so it's just true, but, or I mean, you know. So if you're ever worried about something, just go ahead and make it as explicit as you can. It's not going to hurt anything, and it is just going to make it more legible and a little less maybe, a little less maybes to deal with. So if ARMC velocity magnitude is less than stun max speed, yeah, just saying if we don't, yeah, if we're doing that, and then we do that, rotate racer, and then limit world velocity. So we just pass in our velocity, and it limits to the world velocity, which is I set at 25. So this should all be good, because now it should only do this if it's on the ground. That is true. Then we're just going to compare it to our accelerate. If is grounded, oh, so if grounded is in the move, not on the accelerate. So if that was something we wanted to work differently, or if we wanted it to work the same, we could do that. I also noticed I did this in stun, but this is never even called, so how is that going to work, right? So I probably did this wrong. So I'm going to control X, then take that away. And then I am going to go to control V. And and accelerate. I put this in the if statement. I don't want that in the if statement. Reason being, actually I have it commented out down below. Reason being, I never want it to exceed. I never want it to exceed this, and so that being that, it should always be called in every fixed update, just so that I know I am setting it correctly, or that's always going to be correct. So if we go back to idle, move, we literally do nothing in move because it's idle. Stun, we do if that, then we do accelerate. We could probably do the same. So what if we do, let's go look at accelerates. We rotate and then accelerate. Let's just copy paste this in. So vector 3 equals that, rotate, and then limit velocity. Then in here we have stun SCO to acceleration. Then we have all of that. So this should all be good at this point. But we won't be able to test it until we get into the stun and make the health start working. So maybe we should do something where we can do dash. Or we could set up a key to do stun. Testing stun isn't all that exciting, but we could do it. Could do that tonight. I think I want to edit my dash one first. Dash is doing this. Let's edit it to do it only if grounded. ARMC dot GS true. And then I'm just going to go and cut. And if that is true, do the following, which includes getting the vector, rotating the character, and accelerate. Now, why is that? Okay, so none of that's different so far. The move is going to stay the same. The thing that's different about this guy is that he's going to automatically exit. So, how do we create a state that automatically exits? Well, that would be using a coroutine. And if you notice, we're not using a mono behavior because race remove state is not a mono behavior. It is a regular C# script. So how do we use a coroutine in a non mono behavior object? Well, the answer is we don't. But what we could do is we could create a delegate in the coroutine. No, not in the coroutine. A delegate that the coroutine could call in a different object, but not gonna really do that either. The best way to probably do it would be to go into move state and have it in here. So move state might actually have a coroutine just because we need to kind of allow that to happen. The other thing is on our physics call, we could update a thing, which would also be a pseudo type little pseudo, what's that called even? I don't know, but make it operate as if it's timed, essentially. Because we know that move is called every fixed update, right? So maybe in dash, let's just make something in dash that helps it take care of itself. So dash might actually have a variable section, vars. And what would that vars be? That would be first we have to decide how we want our dash to work. Do we want it to be velocity based? So do you exit dash when you drop below a certain speed? Do you exit dash based on a time thing, which would be a little better. Just upping so it'd be like a short boost where you can also do the dash. That's fine. Would it be something else? So I think I'd use a time one just because I think it's the easiest one, not the easiest one to code, but it's the easiest one to understand because the last thing you want your player is like, oh, I can't believe I dropped my velocity within this kind of thing, and it's yeah. So we'll say time, and instead of doing wait for seconds, we'll do that. So this will be time. So this will be a we can do private because we're not going to inherit from this class anyway. Could do protected if we wanted to change how our dash works though. So protected, and this is gonna be a float. And what do we do with the float? Well, with the float, we just kind of want to go do a thing, right? We just want it to be a time. So what's our, let's call it our time to dash and use lowercase like big brain people. Time to dash, and then that is equal to time 2 dash, we'll set it equal to 2, and why 2? Because I don't want it to take too long for me to test it. So time time since dash. So the time since you start dashing. I'll open and do some comments. And what would actually be better name for this is dash duration. And we'll call this one dash lowercase, like big brain people. Dash elapse. So that being the time that has passed, that has elapsed, which is equal to 0 on default. And why 0? Because dash elapse is going to keep track of how much time we have been in this dash state for. So for move, dash has an auto exit, which we need to go ahead and do. So I want a method that will check if we need to exit dash, right? So let's just call this protected, or check, and what do we need to do on top of that? So we're going to have to increment time elapsed. We're going to have to reset time elapse. And then, yeah, check and exit dash. And then we exit. Exit to, and we probably want to go exit to acceleration, right? Our accelerating state. Exit to the acceleration state, and that should all be pretty good. So there's our steps in there. So now we can begin. So let's call this, let's just create this protected PROTEC, protected virtual void exit dash parameters lines. And what do we have here? So we'd probably have, I'm not going to have any parameters because it's going to call, right? Unless I have to access something, which I might. Decide that I want to use the RMC in here somewhere. That reason being, I might want to create a variable that isn't in the dash to keep track of how much or what the time would be, like the desired time to dash, the dash duration as defined. So I don't really want this go on here. I want it to go A R N ARMC. And for right now, we're just going to go elapse, dash elapse plus equal, so we're just incrementing it here. Dash elapse plus equals the time dot fixed delta time, which is the time since the last physics frame. That's not a method. So we have increment time elapsed. I'm going to go ahead and open some lines and then also go grab these guys. So then we need to check. Check if the time, basically check if we should exit dash. If And if we want to exit dash, we use an if statement. If dash elapse, and it's pretty close, but that's not quite what I want. Dash elapse is greater than. If dash elapse is greater than dash duration, then we want to do a thing. And what is that thing? Well, then we want to reset time elapsed. And why do we want to do that first? If you're changing states, you want to reset it before you leave, just in case it's like there's some sort of processing problem or execution order issue. It's just like when you destroy a game object, you want to do everything before that destroy call so that you make sure it's executed correctly. So I reset everything before I leave a class, which would be I'm leaving the dash and going into accelerate is the way I think of it. So I reset my time elapsed, and that sets up me to be sure that my execution order is correct. So it's dash elapse, and we set that equal to 0 because we have 0 seconds on the dash clock now. Cool. And then we have exit to acceleration. This one's a little trickier. Not really tricky, but we want to exit to acceleration. Well, we already have these methods from before for changing states. And as you see, accelerate changes our state, or doesn't change our state, but it returns accelerate here. And actually in the move state SCO, the racer move context. So if I hit this, racer move context, I have methods in here that are public that can be called. Yes, in the change states region, I have stun, I have accelerate, idle, grid, grind, draft, dash, and accelerate. So it goes and gets accelerate from the current class that I'm in. So as dash returns accelerate, so the context will call down to him again, get what his class is supposed to be, which is accelerate, returns it, and he'll move to that state. Okay. So exit to acceleration. So all we have to do here is take our move context. So we did need a move context. ARMC dot. Why can't I accelerate? Is that not a? That's a public method, isn't it? Public void accelerate. Now why can't I call that? Does not contain a definition accelerate. Race manager? Did I got the wrong type when I hit autocomplete. I want to race move context. Accelerate line. Yep. So then we have that one, and we're moving into that, and that should exit our dash, but we'll save the testing till next week just to make sure it's all good. So we'll probably come up here and finish some dash and move into the health script a little bit, which will use some something like the command pattern. But it's not too extreme. So we look at that, accelerate from here. So if we go back to Unity, just make sure we have no errors before we close our project. Everything looks good. Then I'm going to go over ahead and pull up our overlay and of the times. So if you find this helpful, share it with your friends. And we have code Tuesdays at 6 p.m. and Thursday we have variable things, anything from code to game streams to Blender. And on Saturday we have art, which is anything from making a channel pretty, or making a banner, or making some concept sketches, sketching out our design ideas as designers for a game. More art focused things, but still majority game based, or sometimes comic based. Just because I kind of like to throw some comic art in the game, because I think if you're a studio that has a hard time having enough time for a bunch of animation or something, adding some comic things could be uh, like some still panels or slightly animated panels could be really cool to help you stretch out that budget, fill in a little bit better. Um, so with that, don't forget to check out Bug Free Productions on YouTube. If you want to go back and start from the beginning with this uh, series of tutorials, or if you want to go back and check on the there's some cool ones over, like Brick Breaker on YouTube is pretty fun, or on my channel, the Brick Breaker playlist is pretty good for new people, and especially if you haven't used Unity before. Once the channel gets a bit more popular, we'll start maybe releasing some documents that I've been working on for Unity, GitHub, and some other stuff. Uh, Maybe get into more of that stuff, because that's going to need videos and editing in order to make that nice and accessible. All right, with that, have a bug-free night, everybody.